Hello, this isn't a comedy video. I'm going to tell you a little story about something that I did on Sunday, but first of all I'm going to read you an extract from Alice in Wonderland, right towards the end of the book, when Alice is in court with the King and Queen. "Hold your tongue," said the Queen, turning purple. "I won't," said Alice. "Off with her head," the Queen shouted at the top of her voice. Nobody moved. "Who cares for you?" said Alice. She had grown to her full size by this time. "Why, you're nothing but a pack of cards." At this, the whole pack rose into the air and came flying down. And that's exactly what happened to me on Sunday when I went and visited my old congregation. I suddenly realised that the elders were nothing but a pack of cards, and that they can't cut your head off if you don't want them to. They can't deal punishments out ad lib. So this is what happened. You may be aware that I do a podcast, and some information came our way that was passed on to me that a paedophile was attending Dewsbury congregation, and by phenomenal coincidence this turned out to be the congregation that I'd been more or less born and brought up in my entire life until I left and moved to get married. And so we did some research and found out that it was indeed true, and that this paedophile was a guy called James O'Brien, and that his story is in the Yorkshire Evening Post. Okay, and the story of James O'Brien is that he was an elder in Pontefract congregation, and that for 30 years he had been abusing pre-teenage girls between the ages of 9 and 12, multiple victims. And when he was caught, he went to prison, and when he came out of prison he wasn't allowed to go back to his original congregation, and so he'd chosen Dewsbury. And so after a great deal of thought, I decided that the only conscionable thing that I could do was to drive up there and go and warn people, basically warn parents that they had a paedophile among them. Now, a bit more investigation revealed that the elders did know that James O'Brien attended Dewsbury congregation, and also that they hadn't told anybody, which is standard. They're not allowed to. The society doesn't allow them to. And so this is the tack that I took. I decided that just like if you knew a recovering alcoholic, you would make sure that you didn't put alcohol in their way, that this paedophile needed help in his recovery by the parents knowing, so that they could make sure that he was never inadvertently left alone with their children, because the newspaper had explained that his abuse had happened in part out on field service with children. And if you didn't know that someone was a recovering alcoholic, you might easily invite them round to tea and offer them wine and accidentally push them back into the problem. So the angle I took was helping him as well as protecting the children. And I printed off some newspaper articles and I put a little note with it which explained that I've just explained to you, and it also said this, because I felt that parents needed to know not just that there was a paedophile there, but that the elders did know but weren't telling them. I think that's an important detail. So my note said, the elders in Dewsbury congregation know the history of Brother O'Brien, but are forbidden from telling the congregation by the Watchtower Society through elders' letters, and I cite the October 2012 one on child abuse and the April 9th 2012 one on legal procedures. And then finally I say, you are allowed to contact police and find out information about James O'Brien under the Child Sex Offenders Disclosure Scheme, also called Sarah's Law. Phone 0808 1900. So parents have a legal right to find out if their children are in close proximity with the paedophile. But how will they know to make that application if they don't know that their children are in close proximity with a paedophile? So I drove up to my old congregation, and it's 3 hours from where I live, so a 6-hour round trip, plus the 2 hours because I was going to attend the meeting as if I was a visiting person. I dressed as a witness, I took my book bag and my Bible and my songbook, I sang the songs, I said amen at the prayer, I nearly blimmin' well answered up in the Watchtower because no other bugger was gonna. And at the end of the meeting, I did the whole association bit, and all the people that I'd known from 25 years ago came and greeted me and kissed me and hugged me and talked to me, and it was really quite pleasant, apart from the fact that at the end I handed out these notes in sealed envelopes, so I wasn't brandishing it about and causing a commotion. So as you can guess, within a few minutes an elder came up that I didn't know, and he was very angry with me for doing this, and he asked me who I was, and I just wouldn't tell him, like Alice in Wonderland. I just thought, I'm just not scared of you anymore. So he kept saying, who are you, who are you? And I said, I don't have to tell you that. How do you know this information? Because it's obviously true. So I said, well, is it true? And he didn't answer. I said, well, it's true, isn't it? So how does it change the story where I got the information from? It's the truth. It's been in the newspaper, and therefore I'm just warning parents. And he said, what if he's chased out of town? And I said, hey, I'm not posting this in the houses round about Kingdom Hall. I said, I'm not even telling the people in the Kingdom Hall who are too old, or, who don't have children. I said, the only people I've given it to are people with children. I said, and they are entitled to know about the sex offenders disclosure scheme, right? That's their legal entitlement. I said, and you know about it, and I understand that you're not allowed to tell them because the society won't let you. I said, but I'm allowed to tell them. Well, he was livid. And I said, look, I was like pretending to be his friend. I said, look, I understand you can't tell them, but I can tell them, so let me get on with it and warn the parents. And I gave him the alcoholics analogy. And he said, what is your motivation for doing this? And I said, well, my motivation is to help this man maintain his integrity, and that people can only help him do that if they know, and therefore they don't put their children in his way. And he said, we're watching this man. And I said, well, you can't watch him all the time. What if he arranges to go out on field service on a Wednesday afternoon, do some back calls with a young kid, and his mum goes, oh yeah, that's brilliant, it's half term, he'd love that. I said, if there's no field service arrangement, you can't monitor that. You can't monitor him all the time. The parents need to know. So he didn't like that either. He said, it's as if you don't trust us. He goes, all our knowledge and all our training, and you don't trust us. And I said, no, actually, I don't trust you, and this is why. And I got this other article out of my briefcase, which I printed off the Silent Lambs website. And this is a list of the Jehovah's Witness paedophiles in the UK in the last 5 years only that have gone to prison for paedophilia. So I showed him that, and I said, no, I don't trust you actually. I said, because that's quite a list, isn't it? I said, that's only the UK, and that's only the last 5 years. And so, no, I don't trust you. And off he went again. Who are you? How do you know it? And he was desperate to know which congregation I attended. And it was ridiculous, because he'd just seen 3 elders come up and kiss me, and 3 elders' wives come up and kiss me. And so how he couldn't just go to them and say, who's that girl? I don't know. It was demanding from that I tell him. It's like a control mechanism, but it wasn't working. I just said, I don't have to tell you. I don't have to tell you that. And we kind of left it like that. He didn't even ask me to leave the Kingdom Hall, which was really weird. He didn't even ask me to leave. I could have quite happily stayed there for ages. But the most disturbing thing about this whole story was that nobody, not a single person that I told about this, batted an eyelid. Nobody was bothered. Not at all. It was if the cult personality had overtaken them and they just shut down, completely shut down. And I felt quite sad, really, because I hadn't expected any thanks, or I hadn't expected to be greeted with warmth. I knew this was a very contentious thing I was doing. But I had expected some negative emotion, like perhaps people being upset with me, apart from the elder who was angry at me. Nobody else was even upset. There was zero emotion at all about the fact that a paedophile who'd been abusing 9 to 12-year-olds for 30 years was in the congregation among them every week. Having said that, he wasn't there the Sunday I went. Well, I don't think he was. I mean, I don't know what he looks like. But the strange thing about the congregation was, when I used to go there 25 years ago, I was like a teenager. There were 30 of us. I counted last night in my head. 30 friends, 30 peers that were my age. The congregation itself was about 150. It was massive. But when I went last Sunday, they'd knocked the old hall down and rebuilt it to less than half its size, and it was still really empty. There were less than 60 people there, and 4 of us were visitors. And the majority of people were really old. I mean, the congregation was dying on its arse. There were actually only 4 children there in total the day I visited, and I did think to myself, if you were a paedophile looking for some fresh meat, this was the very last congregation you'd want to end up in, because there was barely anything there for him to fiddle. So it was really sad to see that, and the people that were there, I recognised most of them. There were 3 or 4 people I didn't know, but they were all people that had been there 20 years ago. There wasn't any people in the 20s, there wasn't any people in the 30s. There were 4 young children, there were about 4 couples in the mid-40s like myself, and then after that it was 70s and older. What a profile, what a sad profile of a congregation. And in fact, it was absolutely phenomenal to visit the congregation and feel, just like Alice in Wonderland, that it was nothing but a pack of cards, nothing to be frightened of, nothing to be angry of, just sadness that the people were so numb to that information, sadness that it was such a small congregation. And I suppose a learning curve for me, that I just felt so empowered. And there wasn't even anything in the meeting to be angry at. There was nothing that would make you be really angry or sick. It was all very mild, moderate stuff. There was no guilt tripping. There was nothing really. It was just really sad. Now there will be some more spin-offs from this, because I intend to pursue this a little bit further, and I'm going to do another video because I've got a great plan off the back of this, because I could tell that the elder that was speaking to me, his default position was to try and disfellowship me, the same as when I went to Gloucester congregation and the elder said, who are you, and threatened to disfellowship me. That's what this guy was getting at. It's the first thing an elder thinks. They've got no other tools in the box. You do something they don't like, they think, right, I'm going to disfellowship you. But I've got a little plan up my sleeve that I intend to share with you shortly. So the upshot of this story is this: Jehovah's Witnesses do harbour paedophiles. They won't tell parents about it. They won't help the paedophile themselves to stay clear of children. They're not interested in helping anyone. The abuser, the abused, potential children that might be abused. All they're interested in doing is keeping it quiet, because those are the rules. My conscience is clear now. I felt that overall the trip was probably pointless, because none of the parents gave a flying toss about whether there was a paedophile there or not. I'd like to think that they think about it later, but who knows. But I feel that I've done the right thing. I didn't make a fuss. I didn't do anything that would make people want to drive him out of town. I made sure that people with children knew, so that they can protect themselves, and hopefully they'll all work collaboratively to make sure that it doesn't reoffend. But personally, I don't think paedophiles are in the business of rehabilitating. I know that of all the sex crimes, it has the greatest recidivism rate, paedophilia. And so the odds that this man has come out of prison after 30 years of abusing and is quite happy to sit back and not abuse again, I think is unlikely. But let's give him the benefit of the doubt, and I just hope that those parents that I've warned now will take steps to protect the children, even though they probably will never speak to me again and will view me as an apostate, which of course I am. So I look forward to speaking to you again on my next plans on this situation. Thank you for listening.